Admiral Zelvex watched in stunned silence as the human vessel carved through the swarm formation with impossible precision. Their weapon systems defied conventional understanding, railguns accelerating metallic projectiles to relativistic speeds, creating kinetic impacts that shattered swarm carapaces where energy weapons had merely scorched them. "What manner of propulsion are they using?" demanded Science Officer Trelnax, his crystalline appendages flickering with agitation. "The vessel changes vector without apparent thrust emissions." "Unknown," replied the sensor technician. "Their drive signature registers as a localized gravity distortion rather than conventional impulse." The Thunderchild executed another maneuver that should have torn a ship of its size apart, rotating along 3 axes simultaneously while maintaining weapons lock on 17 separate targets. Swarm vessels scattered, their previously flawless coordination dissolving into chaos. "Open a direct channel to their commander," ordered Zelvex, his dorsal membranes pulsing with cautious hope. Captain Rodriguez appeared on screen again, her environment filled with activity as human crew members moved with purpose in the background. Unlike the calm, methodical operations of Concord vessels, the humans called to each other, their communications seemingly haphazard yet strangely effective. "Admiral, we've created an opening in their defensive matrix," Rodriguez reported, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. "Your remaining cruisers can target the command node at these coordinates." She transmitted targeting data that somehow integrated perfectly with Concord systems. "This tactical assessment is unprecedented," Trelnax observed. "No Concord analysis predicted such a vulnerability." "We see patterns differently," Rodriguez replied with another of those curious mouth expressions. "Now, if you don't mind, we need to keep their attention while you line up your shot." Before Zelvex could respond, the Thunderchild accelerated directly toward the largest swarm vessel, weapon sports glowing with building energy. "They're attempting a suicide run," gasped a junior officer. "No," Zelvex realized, mandibles clicking in sudden understanding. "They're creating a diversion." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target all remaining energy cannons on the coordinates they provided. Full discharge authorized." As the Concord flagship's weapons powered up, the Thunderchild performed something the humans later called a crazy Ivan, cutting engines completely and rotating to fire in all directions while momentum carried them through the swarm formation. The maneuver drew every enemy vessel's attention, creating precious seconds for the Concord ships to align their shot. "Firing solution acquired," announced the weapons officer. "Execute," ordered Zelvex. The combined energy discharge from the remaining Concord vessels lanced through space, striking the previously hidden command node. The structure collapsed in cascading explosions, sending ripples of confusion through the swarm fleet. Vessels that had moved with perfect coordination moments before began colliding with each other, weapons firing randomly. "All ships, target individual swarm vessels," ordered Zelvex. "Follow the human ship's tactical lead." For the next 20 minutes, the combined human Concord force systematically dismantled the swarm fleet. When the final enemy vessel shattered into debris, a silence fell over the Concord command deck. "Request permission to dock, Admiral," came Rodriguez's voice over the comm. "I believe we have much to discuss about our mutual enemy." Zelvex studied the strange human vessel, its hull bearing scorch marks and impact damage yet still fully operational. In his 300 cycles of service to the Concord, he had never witnessed combat effectiveness of this caliber, especially not from an unknown species. "Permission granted, Captain Rodriguez," he replied, making his decision. "And on behalf of the Galactic Concord, I extend our sincere gratitude for your timely intervention." Science Officer Trelnax's compound eyes flickered rapidly as he reviewed the battle footage for the 12th time. The human vessel's maneuvers defied conventional physics, or at least, conventional application of physics. "They're using controlled gravitational lensing," he finally announced to the gathered Concord strategists. "Their drive creates micro-singularities that bend spacetime around the hull, allowing for vector changes without inertial consequences." Admiral Zelvex contemplated the holographic display showing the Thunderchild's internal structure, which Captain Rodriguez had surprisingly permitted them to scan. And these weapon systems, primitive in concept, revolutionary in execution, replied engineering specialist Morlack, her tentacles manipulating the display to highlight the ship's armaments. They're using magnetically accelerated projectiles rather than energy beams, but the acceleration chambers achieve velocities we considered theoretically impossible without material degradation. They've reinforced the chambers with quantum-locked carbon lattices, added another engineer. A technology we abandoned centuries ago as inefficient compared to plasma weaponry. The gathered aliens fell silent as Captain Rodriguez entered the strategic chamber, flanked by her tactical officer and chief engineer. The humans moved with that strange unpredictability that made the Concord species instinctively uneasy, their bodies constantly making minor adjustments, eyes darting around, fingers tapping without apparent pattern. Your ship's design principles violate 17 established conventions of Concord engineering, stated Morlack without preamble. Rodriguez smiled. We tend to ignore conventions we never knew existed. Earth developed in isolation, so our solutions evolved without preconceptions. Yet your tactics devastated a swarm formation that had decimated our most advanced fleet, observed Admiral Zelvex. How is this possible? The human tactical officer, Commander Chen, stepped forward. The swarm relies on predictive algorithms to anticipate enemy movements based on optimal response patterns. Your ships, with respect, behave precisely as advanced mathematical models would suggest, maximizing efficiency and following logical progressions. And yours do not, asked Trelnax. Humans embrace controlled chaos, Rodriguez explained. We implement randomized variables in our tactical systems and train our pilots to occasionally choose suboptimal maneuvers specifically to disrupt predictive targeting. The Concord strategists exchanged troubled glances. The concept violated their most fundamental military doctrine: maximum efficiency through calculated precision. Observe, said Chen, activating a portable projector that displayed Thunderchild's battle data. When we executed this lateral drift while firing thrusters in the opposite direction, it served no efficiency purpose. The maneuver actually wasted fuel and created structural strain. But it also confused the swarm targeting systems long enough for us to target their communication nodes. Inefficiency as strategy, murmured Zelvex. Fascinating. Rodriguez nodded. We call it tactical unpredictability. Sometimes the best move isn't the one that makes the most sense. Your species developed this approach naturally, asked Morlack. Our entire history is filled with military leaders who won by doing the unexpected, said Rodriguez. From ancient generals crossing mountains thought impassable to space captains shutting down engines to drift through enemy sensor nets. As if to punctuate her point, alarms suddenly blared across the Concord flagship. A communications officer rushed in, membrane wings vibrating with urgency. Admiral, long-range sensors detect multiple swarm signatures approaching, at least 3 times the previous force. Rodriguez and her officers exchanged glances. They've adapted to their defeat, she said grimly. Now they're coming back with overwhelming numbers. Admiral Zelvex's appendages stiffened in the Concord gesture of resolve. Then we must also adapt. Captain Rodriguez, would your crew be willing to temporarily integrate tactical systems with our fleet? I believe it's time the Concord learned this human concept of unpredictability. Rodriguez nodded, a determined expression crossing her features. That's what we do best, Admiral. Let's teach the swarm not to underestimate either of us. The Concord flagship's central chamber had been hastily reconfigured to accommodate human physiological needs, gravity adjusted to Earth standard, atmospheric composition modified, and temperature raised to what felt like an uncomfortable heat to most council members. Admiral Zelvex found the accommodations a small price to pay as he observed Captain Rodriguez's team integrating their tactical systems with Concord technology. Your species' neural interfaces are remarkably invasive, noted Medical Director Yves Nar, observing the direct connections between human neural implants and their equipment. Does this not create psychological distress? Lieutenant Park, the Thunderchild's communication specialist, shrugged while adjusting a connection. Our implants are voluntary and minimal compared to full integration systems. Most of our interfaces remain tactile by preference. Preference over efficiency. Evenar's feathered sensory organs quivered in confusion. Humans maintain a certain independence from our technology, explained Rodriguez, supervising the installation. We found maintaining separation prevents certain vulnerabilities. The implication wasn't lost on the Concord leadership. Their own ship systems operated through direct neural consensus, with crews linked into collective operational matrices, efficient but potentially susceptible to widespread system compromise. Commander Chen entered the chamber, carrying a secure data module. Captain, I've completed the analysis of swarm communication patterns from the battle data. The gathered aliens tensed visibly as Chen connected the module to the shared systems. Access to unfiltered tactical data was typically restricted to highest clearance levels, yet these humans shared it readily. You trust us with this information? Asked Zelvex. Admiral, we're about to face an overwhelming enemy force together, Rodriguez replied matter-of-factly. Operational security matters less than survival at this point. Chen activated the display, revealing complex communication patterns between swarm vessels. We've identified something unusual. The swarm doesn't communicate like a hive mind, as previously assumed. There's a distinct information hierarchy. Command nodes receive prioritized data, while drone vessels operate with limited awareness. Science Officer Trellnax moved closer to the display, crystalline appendages extending in fascination. This contradicts all previous Concord intelligence. We've assumed unified consciousness based on synchronized movements. That's because your tactics have always engaged them conventionally, Chen explained. When we disrupted their formations with unpredictable maneuvers, their response revealed the communication lag between command and execution levels. Rodriguez pointed to specific nodes in the display. These vessels here, they're not fighters but dedicated communication relays. If we target them specifically, we can create isolated pockets of swarm forces operating without higher coordination. The revelation sent murmurs through the Concord officers. Their centuries of warfare against the swarm had never identified this vulnerability. How did your species discern this pattern so quickly? Asked Zelvex, mandibles clicking in what humans now recognized as intrigue. Rodriguez and Chen exchanged glances before the captain responded. Humans evolved as pack hunters who later developed hierarchical military structures. We recognize the patterns because we've used similar communication frameworks ourselves. Trellnax's crystalline structure flickered with sudden understanding. You recognized yourselves in the enemy. Know your enemy as you know yourself, quoted Commander Chen, an ancient human military principle. The conversation halted as emergency signals pulsed across the command interfaces. The tactical officer's voice came through with urgency. Admiral, the swarm fleet has altered course. They're no longer approaching our position. They are heading directly toward the Nexus colonies. Zelvex's membranes darkened with alarm. Billions of civilians with minimal defenses. Rodriguez stepped forward, her expression resolute. Admiral, the Thunderchild can reach the Nexus system ahead of the swarm if we leave immediately. We can begin evacuations and establish initial defensive positions before your fleet arrives. A single vessel against such numbers? Questioned Evenar. The probability of success. Sometimes impossible odds just need a human perspective, Rodriguez interrupted. We'll make it work. The holographic projection of the swarm's harvesting pattern rotated slowly above the conference table aboard the Thunderchild. Captain Rodriguez had insisted on bringing the Concord delegation to her ship as they raced toward the Nexus colonies at speeds that made even the most experienced alien navigators uncomfortable. Your vessel's faster-than-light capabilities exceed our theoretical models, noted Science Officer Trellnax, his crystalline appendages flickering with calculations. The quantum stress on your hull should be causing molecular degradation. Lieutenant Commander Vikram Chen smiled slightly. We reinforce our hull with a resonance field that distributes quantum stress across multiple potential states simultaneously. It's not elegant, but it works. Inelegant but effective, murmured Admiral Zelvex, a consistent pattern with human technology. We focus on results over theoretical purity, replied Rodriguez, adjusting the holographic display. Speaking of results, this is what concerns me most. The display zoomed in on the elemental analysis of materials the swarm had harvested from conquered worlds. Complex molecular structures appeared, rotating to show their unusual configurations. These aren't random resources, explained Chen. They're specific isotopes and compounds, many artificially refined before extraction. The swarm isn't just strip mining. They're collecting precise materials according to some predetermined formula. Medical Director Eve Nar leaned forward, feathered sensory organs extending toward the display. These molecular configurations, they resemble neural pathway analogs we've observed in ancient precursor technology. Exactly, nodded Chen. Whatever they're building, it's designed to interface with living consciousness, but on a scale we've never encountered before. The implications settled heavily on the gathered leaders. The precursors, the mysterious species that had disappeared eons ago, leaving behind artifacts of incomprehensible technology, had long been subjects of scientific obsession throughout the galaxy. How did humans discover this pattern? Asked Zelvex, his compound eyes fixed intensely on Rodriguez. Our scientists have studied swarm activity for centuries without noting these correlations. Rodriguez exchanged glances with Chen before answering. Honestly, Admiral, we weren't looking for patterns in what they took. We were looking for patterns in what they left behind. She adjusted the display again, showing worlds the swarm had harvested and abandoned. Every planet they strip, they leave exactly 17.3% of these specific elements untouched, regardless of accessibility or concentration. That's not random. That's deliberate. A quality control threshold, breadth Trellnax, crystalline structure pulsing with realization. They're ensuring purity by leaving behind materials that don't meet specific parameters. But that's not the most disturbing part, continued Rodriguez, zooming the display toward the coordinates at the galactic core. Based on the quantity of materials they've harvested, we've calculated the approximate dimensions of whatever they're constructing. The hologram shifted, displaying a massive spherical structure with intricate internal geometries. It's approximately the size of a small moon, said Chen quietly, and based on precursor dimensional mathematics, it's designed to create a stable Einstein-Rosen bridge, a wormhole, precisely at these coordinates. The sealed dimensional rift, whispered Zelvex. They're not just opening a passage, Rodriguez concluded grimly. They're creating a permanent gateway. And according to our calculations, they've already collected 83% of the required materials. The ship's communication system suddenly activated. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting swarm vessels already in the Nexus system. Estimated civilian casualties at 14 million and climbing. Rodriguez straightened, her expression hardening. We're still 30 minutes out at maximum velocity. Too late to prevent the harvest, stated Zelvex, membranes darkening with despair. Maybe not, said Rodriguez, a determined gleam in her eyes. Commander Chen, prepare the prototype for deployment. It's time to test our temporal distortion field in actual combat. The Nexus system burned. From the Thunderchild's observation deck, Admiral Zelvex watched in horror as swarm harvesters methodically extracted entire sections from the colony world's crust, leaving geometric wounds visible even from orbit. Civilian evacuation ships fled in chaotic patterns, many intercepted by swarm fighters. This is barbaric, whispered Trellnax, his crystalline structure dulled with dismay. This is why we prepared, said Captain Rodriguez, entering the deck with Commander Chen. Both humans wore form-fitting black suits lined with glowing circuitry, technology unlike anything the Concord delegation had seen before. The temporal distortion prototype, Rodriguez explained, noting their curious gazes. It creates a localized field that alters the passage of time within its radius, allowing us to move and react faster than our surroundings. Impossible, stated Trellnax. The energy requirements alone would drain our entire power grid in minutes, finished Chen. Which is why we're using these. He showed a small, pulsing blue crystal embedded in his suit's chest piece. Quantum batteries. Unstable but effective. Zelvex's compound eyes narrowed. You possess technology this advanced yet remain unknown to the galactic community until now. We've learned caution, Admiral, replied Rodriguez evenly. Earth's first encounters with alien signals weren't friendly. We developed most of our advancements in response to perceived threats. Lieutenant Santos interrupted from the tactical station. Captain, I've identified 3 primary swarm command vessels coordinating the harvest. If we can disrupt their operation, the civilian transports might have a chance to escape. Rodriguez nodded and turned to Zelvex. We're deploying insertion teams to each command vessel. I need your authorization to integrate Concord override protocols with our infiltration packages. You intend to board swarm vessels? Asked Medical Director Eve Nar, her feathered appendages trembling with alarm. The biological contaminants alone. Our suits protect against known swarm biological agents, said Chen. What we need are your decryption algorithms for their navigation systems. Zelvex studied the humans closely. These insertion teams, they're your crew members. Volunteers, corrected Rodriguez, myself included. The alien leaders exchanged glances of disbelief. In Concord military doctrine, command personnel never participated in high-risk field operations. The preservation of leadership was prioritized above all tactical considerations. Your death probability exceeds 87%, stated Trellnax bluntly. Rodriguez smiled. Then we better improvise well. She turned to the tactical display. Each team will deploy via targeted micro-jumps directly into the command vessel's central processing nodes. We'll upload the virus package, then designate extraction points for emergency teleport. Teleportation technology is theoretical at best, protested Trellnax. The quantum uncertainty is manageable with sufficient processing power. Chen interrupted, tapping his temple where a neural implant glowed softly. Our onboard AI handles the calculations fast enough to reassemble our molecular structure with acceptable margins of error. Acceptable margins, echoed Evenar, horrified. The suit records our exact molecular configuration before transport, explained Rodriguez. Any discrepancies can be corrected during reassembly. Admiral Zelvex's mandibles clicked rapidly, a gesture the humans now recognized as intense deliberation. Finally, he activated his command interface and transmitted authorization codes to the Thunderchild systems. The Concord grants full protocol access, he announced formally. But I request Concord representation on each insertion team. My people are also willing to risk their lives for this mission. Rodriguez extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. After a moment's hesitation, Zelvex pressed his appendage against it. 3 teams, Rodriguez confirmed. Infiltrate, upload, extract, and hopefully turn this battle around. As the insertion teams made final preparations, the Thunderchild sensors detected new signatures entering the system. The first wave of reinforcements from both Earth and the Concord, arriving sooner than expected. Perfect timing, murmured Rodriguez, checking her weapon systems. Let's give them something to fight for. The observation deck of the Concord diplomatic vessel erupted in astonished murmurs as the human fleet materialized from hyperspace. Unlike the uniform, crystalline elegance of Concord ships or the chitinous, organic symmetry of swarm vessels, each human warship appeared uniquely designed, a bewildering array of configurations that defied standardization. Tactical assessment impossible, muttered a Concord analyst, compound eyes rapidly scanning the incoming vessels. No discernible pattern to their fleet composition. Admiral Zelvex, still recovering from injuries sustained during the insertion mission, watched with newfound appreciation. The successful strike against the swarm command vessels had saved millions of civilians, but at significant cost. Captain Rodriguez herself had barely survived, currently undergoing emergency medical procedures in the Thunderchild's medical bay. The lack of pattern is precisely their strength, he observed. Each vessel serves a specialized function, rather than attempting to balance all capabilities. The central communications array activated, displaying a stern-faced human female with silver-streaked hair and admiral's insignia. This is Admiral Helena Takahashi of the Earth Defense Fleet, requesting coordination with Concord forces for immediate counter-offensive operations. Zelvex straightened despite his injuries. Admiral Takahashi, this is Concord High Command. Your arrival is most timely. Captain Rodriguez's actions have temporarily disrupted swarm coordination, but our tactical position remains precarious. Maya always did have excellent timing. Takahashi responded with a brief smile that quickly faded. We've received her data packet on the swarm's dimensional gateway project. Earth has authorized deployment of our entire battle group to prevent its completion. The display split to show the approaching human fleet's composition. Massive carriers launching swarms of fighter craft. Sleek, stealth-configured vessels with minimal energy signatures. Heavy bombardment platforms bristling with weapons arrays. And strangest of all, ships that appeared to bend light around their hulls, becoming visible only when changing vector. The phase-shifted vessels are particularly effective against swarm detection systems, explained Takahashi. They can penetrate defensive screens and deliver targeted strikes against command nodes. Science Officer Trelnax, monitoring from the medical bay where he assisted with Rodriguez's treatment, joined the communication. Admiral Takahashi, our analysis suggests the swarm will adapt to Captain Rodriguez's virus within approximately 12 hours. We must capitalize on their disorganization immediately. Agreed, nodded Takahashi. I'm transmitting a tactical proposal now. The strategic display updated with a complex battle plan that caused the Concord analysts to buzz with confusion. Rather than the methodical, wave-based approaches favored by Concord doctrine, the human plan appeared chaotic. Multiple simultaneous strikes from different vectors, apparently contradictory movements, and deliberate sacrifices of tactical position. This approach defies conventional strategic logic, protested the Concord tactical officer. It's designed to, replied Takahashi. The swarm's adaptive algorithms seek patterns to counter. We're denying them that opportunity by implementing controlled chaos. Medical Director Eve Nar's voice joined the communication. Admiral Zelvex, Captain Rodriguez has regained consciousness and requests to join the strategic discussion. Moments later, Rodriguez appeared on the display, pale but determined, a medical exoskeleton supporting her injured body. Admiral Takahashi, good to see Earth didn't send the second string. Takahashi's expression softened momentarily. When we received your distress signal, every captain volunteered. The swarm made this personal when they hit New Horizon Colony last year. The Nexus attack was calculated to draw us out, Rodriguez explained to the Concord leadership. They've been monitoring our expansion patterns just as we've been monitoring theirs. Then let's show them that was a miscalculation, said Takahashi grimly. All vessels, prepare for coordinated assault. Operation Lightbringer commences in 30 minutes. As the communication ended, Admiral Zelvex turned to his officers. Integrate all remaining Concord vessels into the human battle groups. Today, we fight as one fleet. Operation Lightbringer unfolded across the Nexus system in a manner that defied conventional tactical analysis. The combined human Concord fleet moved with deliberate unpredictability, vessels accelerating and decelerating at seemingly random intervals, weapon systems firing in asynchronous patterns rather than coordinated volleys. From the command deck of the Thunderchild, now serving as the Joint Species Tactical Headquarters, Captain Rodriguez monitored the battle alongside Admiral Zelvex. Her medical exoskeleton hummed softly as it continued repairing her internal injuries. The swarm is attempting to establish a defensive perimeter around their harvesting operation, noted Trelnax, monitoring sensor data. They're committing 70% of their combat vessels to protection of the extraction sites. As expected, nodded Rodriguez. Admiral Takahashi, execute Phase 2. On the tactical display, the specialized human vessels designated as Phantoms suddenly disappeared from all sensor readings. Even the Concorde tracking systems, linked directly to the ship's transponders, registered only empty space where warships had been moments before. Complete sensor negation, whispered a Concorde technician in awe. Not mere cloaking, but active quantum displacement. The Phantoms carry our infiltration teams, explained Rodriguez. While the main fleet occupies their attention, our specialists will target the central harvesting control node. Admiral Zelvex's compound eyes tracked the battle's progression with growing appreciation for human tactical doctrine. Your species implements deception as a foundational strategy rather than a supplementary tactic. We learned early in our military history that superior numbers and technology can be overcome through misdirection, Rodriguez replied. The swarm expects us to prioritize stopping their harvesting operations. Instead, we target their ability to process and transport what they've already collected, finished Zelvex, mandibles clicking with understanding. The tactical display suddenly flared with new energy signatures as swarm reinforcements emerged from hyperspace, a massive wave of combat vessels surrounding a central structure unlike any previously encountered. New swarm configuration detected, announced the sensor officer. Energy signatures suggest it's a mobile processing hub for harvested materials. Rodriguez leaned forward, wincing slightly despite her exoskeleton support. That's our primary target. If we can destroy that hub, they lose the ability to refine the elements needed for the dimensional gateway. Incoming transmission from Phantom Leader, reported the communications officer. Commander Chen's voice came through, punctuated by interference. Infiltration teams in position. Swarm Processing Hub has minimal internal defenses. They never expected anyone to get this close. Planting quantum destabilizers now. All vessels, execute convergence pattern Delta, ordered Rodriguez. Create a corridor for the Phantom's extraction. The combined fleet suddenly shifted formation, creating a spearhead aimed directly at the swarm's heaviest concentration. Concorde vessels, traditionally deployed in defensive arrangements, moved aggressively forward alongside human warships, their complementary weapon systems creating overlapping fields of destruction. Destabilizers armed, reported Chen. Detonation in 30 seconds. Extraction underway. The tactical display showed the Phantom vessels reappearing, accelerating rapidly away from the processing hub as swarm vessels attempted to intercept them. All ships, activate point defense systems, ordered Admiral Takahashi over the fleet-wide channel. Nothing touches those Phantoms. A spectacular light show erupted across space as hundreds of vessels fired simultaneously, creating a protective corridor for the retreating infiltration teams. As the last Phantom cleared the engagement zone, the processing hub shuddered visibly. Detonation confirmed, announced Chen triumphantly. Hub structural integrity failing. The massive swarm structure collapsed in on itself, the quantum destabilizers creating a cascading reaction that consumed both the hub and the refined materials it contained. A cheer erupted across the command deck, from both human and Concorde officers alike. Admiral Zelvex turned to Rodriguez. A decisive victory, Captain. Not yet, she replied grimly, pointing to the tactical display where thousands of swarm vessels still remained. That was just Phase 2 of 5. Now comes the difficult part. The dimensional rift pulsed with otherworldly energies, its edges fluctuating between states of matter that defied conventional physics. The combined fleet had fought their way through 3 swarm defensive lines to reach this position. The coordinates where the ancient precursors had sealed away something so dangerous they had sacrificed their entire civilization to contain it. Captain Rodriguez stood on the Thunderchild's observation deck, her medical exoskeleton finally removed after the regeneration treatments had completed their work. Beside her, Admiral Zelvex and the Concord leadership stared in horrified fascination at the partially constructed gateway anchored to the rift's perimeter. Despite our victory at the processing hub, they've already installed the primary focusing arrays, noted Commander Chen, analyzing the structure's configuration. The gateway is approximately 78% complete and fully capable of establishing a limited connection, added Trelnax, crystalline appendages flickering with rapid calculations. Energy readings suggest they've already initiated preliminary dimensional tunneling. A shudder ran through the ship as something massive moved within the rift, a shadowy presence visible only through the distortion of space-time around it. "What exactly did the precursors seal away?" asked Rodriguez quietly. Admiral Takahashi joined them, her expression grim. "According to the data we extracted from the swarm command vessels, they call it the Sovereign, a consciousness that existed before the current universe stabilized. The precursors discovered it feeding on nascent star systems and managed to isolate it, but couldn't destroy it. And now the swarm serves as its harvesting mechanism," concluded Zelvex. "Created or corrupted to free their master." The tactical display updated as the fleet established battle positions around the gateway. Earth and Concord vessels formed interlocking defensive layers, preparing for the final phase of Operation Lightbringer. "The quantum destabilizers won't work against the gateway's reinforced structure," reported Chen. "We need direct access to the central control node to override the dimensional calibration systems." Rodriguez studied the tactical projections, noting the concentrated swarm defenses around the gateway's central spine. Conventional approaches would result in total fleet destruction before reaching the target. "Then we'll use an unconventional approach," stated Admiral Takahashi, activating the secure command channel. "Thunderchild, this is Fleet Command. You are authorized to deploy Singularity Protocol." A hushed silence fell over the command deck. Even the Concord leaders sensed the weight of those words without understanding their meaning. Singularity Protocol was developed as an absolute last resort, explained Rodriguez to Admiral Zelvex. It creates a contained micro-black hole that can be directed as a projectile, creating a momentary rupture in spacetime. The Thunderchild will fire the device directly into the gateway's structural core, continued Takahashi. The resulting gravitational collapse should seal the rift permanently. Understanding dawned in Zelvex's compound eyes. But the deployment vessel would be caught in the event horizon. Rodriguez nodded solemnly. The Thunderchild was designed for this contingency. Her primary mission was always to serve as delivery system if we encountered an extinction-level threat. "The crew," began Evenar. "Will evacuate to support vessels," interrupted Rodriguez, "except for the deployment team. I'll pilot her and myself." Admiral Takahashi stepped forward. "Maya." "My ship, my responsibility," Rodriguez stated firmly. "The navigation through swarm defenses requires human intuition coupled with the Thunderchild systems. No automated approach would succeed." Before further objections could be raised, a massive energy surge erupted from the gateway. Space itself seemed to tear as something began to emerge, a darkness deeper than the void, radiating ancient malevolence. "The Sovereign is breaking through," reported Chen urgently. "Gateway integrity at 93% and rising." Rodriguez turned to Zelvex, extending her hand in the human gesture that had come to symbolize their alliance. "It's been an honor, Admiral." Zelvex clasped her hand firmly. "Your species has shown us the true meaning of courage, Captain. The Concord will remember." As evacuation orders echoed through the Thunderchild, Rodriguez took her place in the command chair, fingers dancing across the neural interface as she prepared for humanity's most important flight.